started. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NPMA Expert Panel. It is my honor to introduce our three panelists that will be answering the questions you may have. Yvonne Bottcher is Director of the Property Management Office at Stanford University. She has held staff and management positions in property administration for profit organizations as well as Stanford University, a premier research-intensive university. Her credentials include a master's degree in education, certified professional property manager, and recognition as an NPMA consulting fellow. Mentoring and providing professional development guidance to individuals in the property management field is a continuous activity in which she is involved. She is an NPMA instructor as well as a frequent workshop presenter throughout the United States. As an active member of the NPMA, she has held numerous leadership positions at chapter, regional, and national levels, including national president, and is a recipient of NPMA's Property Person of the Year Award. She is currently serving as NPMA's National Vice President of Administration. Second is Dr. Douglas N. Getz, and Dr. Getz has been a working level property administrator in the field and then professor at two universities, the Air Force Institute of Technology and the Defense Acquisition University. He is now president of GP Consultant LLC, providing cutting-edge consulting, application, and education in the field of contract government property management. A member of NPMA for over 3 decades, Dr. Getz is a frequent presenter at the fall and spring educational seminars as well as the National Educational Seminar, and conducts numerous classes, chapter workshops, and presentations across the country and around the world. Dr. Getz has been awarded the Lifetime Achievement, Property Person of the Year, and Federal Property Person of the Year awards. He is currently serving as Vice President of Parliamentary Affairs. And our third panelist, Stephen Holland. Mr. Stephen Holland is a senior consultant with LMI Government Consulting Infrastructure Analytics Group. Mr. Holland's career in property and logistics management spans over 35 years as a contractor employee and consultant to the federal government. He has supported several federal asset and logistics management projects for the intelligence community, Department of Homeland Security, Environmental Protection Agency, and Department of Energy by applying experience and industry-leading practices to project deliverables. Mr. Holland has served as an expert and trusted advisor to senior management, executives, and high-ranking officials in governing committees on property management in both the federal and private sectors. He has been an active member in the NPMA since 1988 and is a current member of the NOVA chapter. Mr. Holland received NPMA Consulting Fellow recognition in February 2013. So as you can see, we have 3 expert panelists. And I'm going to start asking one question, and I'll start with asking it to you, Yvonne, first, and then we'll go to Dr. Doug, and then Stephen. What are the 3 most beneficial skills a property professional should have for increasing success?
Thank you, Sidda, and welcome everybody. Glad you're here this morning or this afternoon, as the case may be. 3 most beneficial skills. The toughest thing with this question was coming up with only 3. I think, in my opinion, I would say the first is to have self-initiative. And I view that as a combination of things, having good communication skills, having confidence without being arrogant about what we're doing, but confidence so people trust in what we're doing. Knowing our stuff, continuously learning and seeking opportunities that help us out. I think all of those fall under self-initiative. The second one would be related to what I will say in the third, but the second one I think is the ability to ask good questions, to be able to probe, to seek clarification, to have that curiosity, that inquisitiveness that makes us want to find out more about a given situation. And then the third is a follow-on to that. That would be then taking a given situation and being able to break it apart into its component parts, to analyze a scenario. That's where a lot of our decision-making comes in. We can do cause and effect, impact, risks, priority analysis, all of the above, that at any level, whether we're entry level or not, are really important in everything we do. So I would say self-initiative, the ability to ask questions, and the ability to analyze a scenario are three top skills we need.
Great. Dr. Getz?
All right. Cinda, thank you. Yvonne, very well said. Lots of good stuff that we have to deal with. The three that I deal with, that I've come up with, are based upon my academic background. So linking that with what we do on a daily basis in property and asset management, the first one is we need the ability to continuously learn. The world of property and asset management is changing, is growing, is maturing, is going through so many different things that unless you can keep up with that information, you're going to fall behind. Your company is going to fall behind. Your university is going to fall behind. Whatever activity you're dealing with, even if you're in the government, you will miss out on that opportunity to work with the people because you lack the knowledge that's necessary in our highly technical field. The second one is linked to that. You need the ability to do research. We've grown up in a society now where if we don't know something, we immediately Google it to find out what the answer is. But Google doesn't always provide good, solid, substantive answers. And that means you may have to go to, they have these other things, these pieces of paper that they put together and put a binding around them. Oh yeah, books. It means we need to go to the books, the NPMA manuals that are out there, other research documents that are out there. We need the ability to do research to find out what the answers are. And that research could take the form of asking other people. The last point, we all have a boss to serve. So the thing that I've been seeing most is we need to cooperatively interact. We have bosses, we have coworkers, we work on teams. If we don't discover, if we don't obtain the ability to interact with these people in a cooperative fashion to solve the problems, they're going to push us aside and lock us in a room, put us into a corner where property will languish, per se. So 3 areas. Number 1, learn all that you can, continuously learn in a lifelong process. Do some good research out there as to finding answers, either literary research or research worth asking other professionals what their views are, and then being able to cooperatively interact with your bosses, your coworkers, and your teams.
Thank you, Dr. Getz. Stephen?
Cinda, thank you very much. The 3 things that 3 skills that I think are most beneficial, and kind of combining off of what Doug and Yvonne have said already, is improving your education. There's always time to learn and improve your personal and professional well-being. Pursuing the next level certification, because it's becoming ever more important that employers are looking for certification. So I think what you need to do is to challenge yourself and pursue, additional education so that you are abreast of, the various functional entities within property management. And if there's something that you are not abreast of, like Dr. Getz said, go and research. So I think that's a great one thing that is very beneficial. The next thing I think is listening. Listening to program managers, your bosses, subject matter experts in certain functional areas, whether they be engineers or specialists involved in budgets, planning, contracts, finance, acquisition, and anywhere in between the asset management life cycle all the way through to disposal, because these folks have requirements, and you need to listen to what their goals are and what they're trying to do so that you can help them be successful, and just basically understanding their needs. So I think listening is a very valuable skill. And lastly, kind of in
listening to these people is building relationships, communicating with coworkers, managers, senior leadership to gain their support and show them how asset management is important to the organization, to yourself, to the CFO. And when I say the CFO, what comes to mind is the balance sheet where property, plant, and equipment is listed from a federal agency point of view, and that transcends to the agency's financial report. So I think, building these relationships, you can help them achieve their strategic and organizational goals. So in summary, improving your education, listening, and building relationships are 3 key skills that a property professional should have.
Great answers by all 3 of you. Jessica, I am not seeing too many people asking questions on the type side. Do you have any with the hands raised?
There are no hands raised currently.
Okay, so I will go with one of the questions I do see. And how did each of you get into property and asset management? And we'll start with Dr. Getz.
Oh, that's no fair. That's really horrible. Throw the issue out there. Very simply, I was walking down by a waterfront and I was hijacked by a group of pirates. Okay, that was meant to be humorous.
It's not April Fool's yet.
Okay, very good. Here's a great question. I mean, this is so cool because I don't think any of us, with very few exceptions, a minimally small number ever planned a career in property and asset management. Never in my wildest dreams back in the early 70s would I have even thought of this. But I had taken an exam through the federal government called the Professional and Administrative Career Examination, which qualified you for a goodly number of jobs. Now, in New York City in 1977, 1978, you couldn't even buy a job. It was going through near bankruptcy. We had a very bad economy. Interest rates were running 12.5%, 13%. And I got a letter from the government that said, hey, look, we'd like you to come in for an interview as an industrial property management specialist. Came to the interview, and I mentioned to the people doing the interview that I had no background at all in industrial property, that I knew nothing about it. Their explanation was simple. They said, no, we will send you to courses. We will do on-the-job training. We will teach you. So in 1978, I started as a lowly GS5 as an industrial property management specialist and worked my way up. Now there's an interesting note that at that time I started going out into the field doing audits of defense contractors, and I ran across this young skinny kid working in a tool crib. That gentleman's name is Tom Ruckdashel. So Tom and I have known each other and started our careers together in the late 70s time frame, which is really interesting to see how people can grow and mature and move up in the ranks of this very interesting career field that many folks don't know about. I'm done.
Great. I thought, well, I was going to wait. I didn't know if you had a little pause to add one more little joke or something to it. Steve, how did you get into the asset property management world?
I'm sorry, Cindy, that was for me?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Well, I started in the 70s as well. I was a young 20-year-old out in the Bay Area in California. I hired on with Lockheed Missiles and Space, a company that my father had worked for. And I was in the property administration and accounting organization, not knowing a lick of what property administration or accounting was. They said, oh, no problem, we will train you. So I was out performing physical inventories and performing some internal audits, basically assisting somebody performing internal audits. And I guess I did pretty well in performing the inventory of one of the special programs that the company had, because they actually offered me a position on their hand-picked team to work in their property group, being responsible for physical inventory. So while I was there, I am very fortunate and so blessed to be able to say that two wonderful people that are on this call, Dr. Douglas Getz and Yvonne Batcher, were my first two property professors. God, I can't remember all the dates, but Doug and Yvonne well know it's back in the 80s. But it has been wonderful ever since. After being on that inventory team within the special program, I was later asked to lead a property management and logistics team within the program. And after 10 years, I was also asked to consider an overseas assignment leading the integrated logistics support team for a different special program within the company. So in doing that, I really wanted to become certified. I started out taking the various classes, and ultimately in 1990, I achieved the CPPM certification. So it has been a wonderful opportunity, and I'm very humbled by my senior leadership, thinking very highly of me and my skills and willingness to get the job done right, and working with people on the program, meeting their needs, and now it's going on 37 years, so it's been a great profession to get into.
Thank you, Steve. And Yvonne, last but not least.
Sure, thanks, Cinda. I was thinking about this. It's interesting to think back on all the kind of serendipitous things that happen in our life and places where we are today. I actually started out not even knowing what property was, although in all fairness, it may be hereditary, because later on in life I found out that my mother used to manage the surplus sales operation at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when they were stationed there. And one day she had an aha moment and said, "Now I understand what it is that you do." So that was kind of interesting. But my personal trek into property, actually I started out as my dream had always been to teach, and I got a degree in secondary education and was teaching high school, and I had an opportunity to take a leave of absence to go teach in Tehran. Yes, as in the Middle East. So I took a leave of absence. I went there for a summer, checked it out, thought it was an interesting and exciting thing to do. And I came back and formalized my leave of absence with the plan on going back. Well, that was when the time they took the American hostages. So I figure it was probably not a good time to show back up with an American passport there at the time. So I had to turn and find something to do. They had already hired someone for a 2-year period, so I couldn't go back to the teaching job I had put on hold for a while. And I started looking around, came across a position in an electronics company. And the reason I got that job was because I was bilingual, spoke Spanish, and I was the international support person for their electronic sales reps in Spain and Portugal. So we did a lot of teletyping back at the time, if any of you remember what that is, and filling orders. And I had no clue at the time, but that was actually a property job, because I was involved with maintaining all the stock and replenishing the stock, shipping the stock of electronic sample parts and components, and taking care of them getting to the sales reps in time. So I had a wonderful manager at the time, and for other reasons I did choose to leave. It was back in the day when everyone was heavy smokers, and I was the only non-smoker in the group. Ended up with various issues, losing my voice, etc. So it wasn't the place for me, but at the same time I met a friend who worked at SRI, Stanford Research Institute at the time. Now they're called Stanford Research International. And he says, "You know, we have a job as a tagger I said, a tagger? What in the world is a tagger? Well, it turns out that it was tagging equipment, receiving equipment, maintaining records, doing physical inventory, coordinating with the disposal team when we had to get rid of property. So pretty much entering on at the clerk level, met a lot of interesting people, and lo and behold, shortly after I arrived there, they got a new manager, and that was Andy Anderson, and that's how Andy and I met. Coincidentally, he and I had been in Tehran at the same time and did not even know that. So we did have a lot in common. But he served as a great mentor, and when the opportunity came, I moved into a property administrator position there, and always being inquisitive and asking questions and looking for more in terms of career growth. That position was a great opportunity. A few years later, I received a call, and actually it was from a recruiter who had contacted NPMA, and they were seeking a property manager at Varian Associates, an electronics company, a government contractor. So I was recruited by them and ended up working there for about 10 years, both at the division and corporate levels. And then a wonderful opportunity came to come work at Stanford. It seemed very foreign because the nonprofit educational arena is very, very different in many ways, although there's a lot of commonality, just the whole tone and process that we work with here. But it was a great opportunity to build a department from the ground up. I would say, were going through many changes at the time, and it was a great opportunity not only to do training, but to put to use all of the property knowledge that I had learned, and yet still learn a tremendous amount having to do with grants and cooperative agreements and other things that were new. So here I am, and it's been quite a trek. In the middle of all that, I was introduced to NPMA, and that has provided amazing opportunities. I think we're going to chat about that a little bit later, but that is my trek in property, and it's ended up being a fabulous career, always challenging, always a little crazy, and never lacking for a bit of fun along the way. Thanks, Cinda.
Great, thank you. We do have a couple of questions that I see. One is by Rita McAllister. What would you say is a low point of property management? And we'll start with Steve.
Well, I would say that the lowest point would be on, which I haven't really experienced, but I guess if you have an audit that has failed and you have to, turn around and develop corrective actions and get the audit turned around and your property system turned around to a satisfactory level, that initial point would be a challenge. But I think overall that my involvement in property management, it has always been a great opportunity. There's always something new to learn. So I haven't really hit the low yet, and hopefully I don't, but maybe Yvonne or Doug can kind of shed a little more light on that.
Oh, you think we've had low points, huh?
Well, no, I just...
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So, Cinda, to clarify, the question is, what was our personal low point in property?
No, I think it's just what do you think is a low point in property? Let me go back to
If I could jump in here, I'd like to discuss personal perspective. Ivana, I don't mean to cut you off there. There was a momentary lull. Hey, here's the deal. I'm going to take a macro approach. What do I think is the low point of property? I think it still exists today. And that is that the highest level of management, and whether this is government or industry, sometimes they don't understand. They fail to see the value that we bring. Now, I think that's self-inflicted in many ways. We like to complain about the mundane. Oh, well, we had some shortages on the inventory, or we lost a little bit of stuff, rather than focusing on the larger issues of what good, what benefit, what value we bring to the company that we work for, or the lowest level property administrator in the government, what value they bring trying to save taxpayer money by ensuring that good systems are out there. Only recently have we seen some emphasis at the highest levels. And when I say recently, I'm talking 10, 15 years, that things are starting to, people are starting to pay attention. Why? I think with the creation of voluntary consensus standards, that's helped. I think that with the rewrite of the FAR taking a more managerial approach, that's helped us convince management, again, government or industry, that we bring value to the table. And the issue of ISO 55000 now, talking to the very highest level. But here's the deal for all of you out there listening: someone else ain't going to do it for you. You are the one who every day has to stand up and shout to your company or to the government, look, what I am doing brings value in the following ways, in the following fashion. That's what we need to do to really elevate this occupational series, this profession to the highest levels.
And Doug, that's a perfect segue to a thought I had along the same lines, and that is probably along those lines, a low point might be not being prepared. And this is where, you know, having your network of professionals, knowing your craft, knowing the strategic and tactical objectives of your organization, all of those really come into play in terms of you being as prepared as possible, so that when you have the opportunity to demonstrate your value, you can do it effectively.
That's a great answer, Yvonne. And someone put a low point for them is companies don't know what to do with property people, what department to put them in. Does anybody have any good feedback? I mean, Steve, what department are you in?
Well, I'm actually in an engineering group now, but I have seen from the contractor side, it's kind of all over the place. When I originally started, I was in finance, but then when I was in the first special program, it was in manufacturing. The second program, it was in logistics. So, and when I finished with Lockheed, I was in contracts. So it's all over the board. I mean, really what kind of makes sense to me, being in contracts, so that you're involved with, you know, contracts up front, but you're also interfacing with, you know, finance and the other functional elements. So I guess it's just a leadership decision. Where they put the function, but two, I think it may be in our best interest for us to communicate where we see it would best fit.
Great. Doug or Yvonne, do you have?
Sure. Interestingly enough, in my career, I would say primarily we've been in the finance chain of command. When I was at SRI, which I would say was my first full-time property job, the storekeeper job that I mentioned a few minutes ago was actually under marketing, because we were promoting new devices and new electronic parts. After that, it was always either under, for a very brief time at SRI, under procurement, and then it was under the CFO. And here at Varian, then we were under the division manager, and when I was at the corporate level, it was under the CFO's branch. Here at Stanford, it's my VP reports to the CFO, and I report to the VP. However, we have a very close relationship with the capital accounting group, who is under the controller's office. So from an academic perspective, we support the CFO and the Dean of Research. From the administrative standpoint, we support the Controller's Office. So we're under an umbrella called Research, Financial Compliance, and Services, because we support both university research as well as sponsored research. An interesting split, but usually under the finance or CFO chain of command.
I'd like to jump in with 2 where you might be located and 2 where you do not want to be located. The 2 where you might want to be located, definitely contracts or definitely finance. Why? If you are dealing with government property, and this is only government property, so if you're in an outside commercial firm dealing with corporate assets, this may not apply. But if you're dealing with the world of government property in the possession of contractors, contracts would be one of the places to be. Why? They understand the issue of compliance and the impacts of failure to comply. The second where you might want to be located, and see this at various other places, is finance. Finance controls the purse strings, and the purse strings can be a very powerful motivator to get things done. Bob McFarland has written a number of articles for the Property Professional and the NPMA publication addressing this value-added issue and the financial impact. I would encourage you to go to the NPMA website and look up the articles that he has written addressing this. It might give you ideas as to how to work within your company or the government aspect. Where you don't want to be located, the production environment. Production people have one agenda and one agenda alone: get the product out of the door. It doesn't matter what the rules say regarding any of the assets that they're using. Their objective: ship, get the stuff out the door. Engineers, well, with all due respect to Yvonne and her principal investigators in the university environment, engineers care not about outside rules. They have their focus on their intellectual efforts, what they're designing, what they're building. You are going to get in the way. And there's a great line from a James Bond movie, Diamonds Are Forever, where James Bond, Sean Connery, dresses up in a white lab coat. He's walking around with a clipboard. He runs across a scientist, and he's trying to explain what he's doing. And the scientist ultimately says to him, "Go away, little man. You bother me." Now that may have a sense of humor to it, but engineers and scientists often don't know that we are there to help them. And I heard a number of wonderful presentations last week out at Yvonne's university property conference of saying, look, we need to convince these people that we are there to help them. So be careful where they put you, but regardless of where you're placed within a corporate environment or a government environment, because within the government there's the same problem, always convince the people that you are there to support their efforts. Don't tell them no if they give you an off-the-wall scenario that they want to do. Rather, provide them a way that they can accomplish their tasks that is within a compliance nature, right? Good luck with getting in a proper position within a corporate or the university, the government world.
Great answers. We have a question for Yvonne. How does your team members train non-financial and asset users on the importance of maintaining assets?
Repeat the question, Cinda, please.
How does your team members train non-financial and asset users on the importance of maintaining assets?
Maintaining, I'm making an assumption here that maintaining is the overall stewardship and management of assets.
I would think that too.
Okay.
I would think that
so
too.
One of the things that we do a lot is we have within our group a team of 3 individuals, and we call them the campus support team. By working title, they're called University Property Administrators. And they have a designated segment of campus that they are responsible for. And they're the liaison between our group and the departments at the local property administrator level. They also interact with potentially the administrative or associate deans of the schools as necessary, department managers, etc. We do a lot of outreach. University campuses tend to be very, oh boy, for lack of a better term, touchy-feely. I know that's not a technical term, but we're very, very, very people-focused, not that others aren't, but I think in a very collaborative way that is just unique to an academic environment. So we tend to focus on not looking at compliance as a negative term, but how can we facilitate and enable them to be able to do their research? And taking that approach, I think, has taken us a very long way over the years, because we're viewed as a very, very valuable resource or solution-oriented department. I think that makes a huge difference. But going out and doing the outreach, providing options and information, and really I can only think of maybe one or two situations over the years here, and I've been here now 22 years, where I don't even think we've ever had to say absolutely no, but maybe no in the way they initially request, but finding that option and explaining the why, and then the choices that there are, and the potential issues with each of the choices. So we work very collaboratively. But getting that information out there, staying very visible in as many ways as we can, individually as well as a group, through our VP, through our CFO. We're very fortunate to have really good support from them, but I think a lot of that is because we're very visible and show what it is that we do and where we may even need to improve. So that helps us a tremendous amount. Hopefully that answers the question. If not, I'll be glad to clarify a little more.
Thank you, Yvonne. Now here's a good question for all of you to think about and answer. What is your opinion on allowing a third-party logistics company oversight and management of the government's property in relation to active contracts? Doug, since I hear you laughing.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm chuckling. So let's see, you are a company that has been awarded a government contract, but now you want to bring in another company to run the property process. You have to make a determination. Are they going to be considered a subcontractor? If they're going to be considered a subcontractor, then is the property going to be made accountable to it or their subcontract? Or if they're only going to be hourly wage workers to perform administrative functions under the control of another employee of the primes company, you run into so many variances, and you need to then clearly define who's going to be ultimately responsible. Now here's one way to do that. Yes, the prime remains steward of that property. They remain accountable for that property furnished under the contract. And the logistics company or the subcontractor is only brought in to do administrative work following the prime's property control procedures. That's probably the cleanest way to do it, because all you're doing is hiring temporary employees, because they're under contract now. They'll go away at the end of that contract. Temporary employees to do administrative work, but never assume accountability or responsibility of that property. But that's going to have to be very clearly documented in your written procedures, because if you don't, the auditing property group, whomever that may be, whether it's DOD or NASA or EPA or FAA, they're going to ask the question, well, great, who's accountable for this property? And if it's that subcontractor, they're going to want to say, well, what liability provision did you flow down? How did you flow down? Where's their property management system? Boy, it can get really, really dirty, really, really ugly very quickly. So that's a really interesting question as to application and what terms and conditions you'd have to specify in that relationship.
Thank you. Steve, do you have anything to add?
Doug hit the nail on the head. I just think that it's a serious management decision whether they bring in an outside company to perform that administrative work, because ultimately it's their responsibility as a prime.
I agree. All right, we have another question. What would you view as the areas of the highest risk that we need to be prepared to handle in today's work climate? Want me to repeat that? What would you view as the areas of highest risk that we need to be prepared to handle in today's work climate? If you can start.
I would think that kind of two go hand in hand: supply chain risk management as well as cybersecurity. We really need to know where the end items and parts are coming from in our supply chain so that there aren't any bad guys out there that would subvert our, the products that we're ultimately building for, our customers, whether that be the U.S. government or not. It's just something that I've been starting to think about, but I think there's a great risk out there if we don't perform some kind of vulnerability assessments of the supply chain.
Thank you. Good answer. Doug or Yvonne, do you have a comment?
Sure. I think there's two areas I would say. Technology changes, and Steve mentioned a couple that would certainly be high in that bucket, I think. But from a property management, administrative, record keeping, accounting, disposition, stewardship, security standpoint, technology changes, and the smaller and more sophisticated technology gets and software gets, the more challenge it poses from all of these arenas. So that in a global sense, I think technology changes as a whole are one of our largest challenges. And being able to accommodate that within accounting rules, which some of them aren't keeping up with good and effective ways to really account for some of these changes in a strong and consistent manner. The other thing I think, and it poses us as managers at some risk, is the changing demographic of our property personnel. We have a lot of people retiring. We have different skill sets coming in, different expectations, different knowledge bases, different ways of interacting and working together or independently. So the management from a personnel standpoint is posing challenges in and of itself. I think for the next coming foreseeable future, we're not necessarily going to see staff members coming in that are interested in making it a long-term career at your organization. Yes, hopefully they'll make it a career, but it doesn't mean that they're planning on staying within your organization for, I would say, even 5 years, where in the past we saw 10, 15, 18, 20 plus years staying within an organization, maybe in different roles, but still within an organization. So I think that turnover poses a whole different layer of challenges. But technology and that changing demographic, there are several others that I thought of, but if I had to pick two, I would say those would highlight.
And I'll jump in with a couple of issues here. You know, when we talk about risk management, we got to study the literature and understand that risk management is looking at future potential occurrences. Once you have an occurrence, it's a past issue that requires some form of correction. But risk, what's the risk? We're looking at the future. What could happen? What scenarios? So I'm going to take a slightly different perspective here and deal with something that just happened within the past couple of weeks. I believe we have a real problem with lack of insight into capital type maintenance. You think, well, maintenance isn't really a glossy item, and it's not a high prestige item. It's, oh yeah, we'll get to it. Tell that to the people in Washington, D.C., where they had to shut down the entire metro system for more than a day to look at what type of maintenance, what type of repairs, what type of capital maintenance needed to be done. The impact on that to the hundreds of thousands of people that ride the subway. And because I'm from New York, if we were to look at the New York City subway system and apply the same template there, the millions of people who would ride the subways every day. So I really think something that we need to do to impress upon them, which sometimes people view as being not in our realm, is what is our company's, or what is the government's, even worse, government's capital maintenance program. Because we generally wait until the system fails. And when the system fails, then everybody comes running, yelling and screaming, saying, what do we have to do? Why did you stop this? This is your fault. You need to fix it. They love to put blame on us, but here's an opportunity where you can say, look, we are doing a risk management action to look at this. Now you guys need to act and cough up the money and plan for this, because if you don't, it will happen. The second part is reiterative of Yvonne. We have in our career field an aging population. We got a lot of people who are very expert in their field. So I'll put myself in that group. Certainly Yvonne and certainly Steve are not in that group. They are not old in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
Okay, it was
I love you, Doug.
Yeah, I know. Okay, but we have this aging population, and all of a sudden, as they walk out the door, we're going to lose all of their knowledge. So therefore, if you're working with a well-experienced person who you respect, who you admire, pick their brains every day, steal knowledge from them, so you can grow and mature. That bimodal distribution, when I look at the NPMA membership, we have a bunch of young kids. So the young folks that are listening today, oh boy, do you ever have an opportunity, because when the old guard moves on, you're going to have opportunity to move up into various other senior level jobs. We are seeing that already within Department of Defense and our demographics of what the DoD workforce looks like. I believe that we could see the same demographics out there in the commercial world. So good luck on that one, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Can you hear me? My connection seemed like it was going out, but are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay.
You're fine.
Thank you. Here is a question that was sent to us. So I'm going to try to describe it, and I hope that I get this right. A discussion of how Prime receives government-furnished material from the customer. And then they receive and inspect as GFM and identify with material systems as GFM and parental ownership. Then the same GFM is identified as CAP when provided to subcontractors for consumption into product. Here's the question. So by being consumed into the product, does it lose its identity of being government furnished material, and then it is just an end product to be DD-250 that customer from hence the GFM came from? I know that was a big question, but did you understand it?
Well, yeah, but there's two parts to it. This is bad. The first part is the typical answer that you hear many times. The answer is it depends to the latter part, being DD-250. The first part, the technical issue, you can't change GFM into CAP or CAM, whatever acronym or abbreviation you want to use. If it is government furnished, it remains government furnished. I don't know how you did a transubstantiation or a transmutation of GFP into CAP, that just doesn't happen. Yes, can GFM be incorporated into another deliverable end item? Yes, it does. It's consumed if it's material into that deliverable end item, and then that deliverable end item would have to be DD 250, accounting for those costs of that GFM. Fixed price, no big deal. You're going to have a deliverable cost associated with that contract line item, but they're two separate questions. You can't convert GFM into CAP. I don't understand how you do that. I have never seen that happen. The second one, well, how do I treat it once it goes into the deliverable end item? It depends. We'd have to get more detail on that one. Wow, that is a tough technical question to try and answer on this type of scenario, because I don't want to see I'd ask the first question, what does your contract say? I'd have to look at the contract. I'm sorry, guys, if I jumped in there.
No, that's good. So we'll, the person who wrote this question, if you would like to send, an email to Dr. Getz or the Yvonne or Steve or myself, please do, and we'll try to help you a little further. But as Doug said, that was a little bit of a difficult question to answer for the time limit we have.
Include all the details there. We need to have all the facts. Don't give us
empirical data. Empirical data. Okay, so this is a question that all three of you, I think, can answer. And it is, what has been your experience for how staffing is set up in property offices? In other words, how many staff make up the department and what positions? Property manager, property administrator, property analyst, etc. So Steve, do you want to start with that?
Well, I would think it has to be based on the number of contracts, the total volume of what property you are managing, and from there, whether you're geographically in one location, because that's going to drive, the structure of your organization. Because if you're just a small organization or company in one building, it may be rather easy, and you may not need as many people. So therefore, there may be a manager and a specialist. Whereas if you have a multinational corporation that is worldwide on a number of contracts, that structure is going to be rather large, where you may have a corporate property division, and you may have it broken out from there in each geographical location. So it's kind of hard, you really have to look at the big picture of what the volume of assets are, where they're located, and so on.
Great. Yvonne or Doug, do you have anything else to add? I have to let you know we are almost out of time. We're at from the Pacific Coast time, it's 11:59. So
sure.
I'll give you a very simple answer then. In regard to how many people. Two-word answer, it depends, but I'm going to use a different word than Steve used. I don't believe it's just how much property or where it's located. I would want to look at the complexity of your system and the risk that is involved with your system. So it's not just how much stuff or how much it's worth, but how complex is your system that you're dealing with there. Can I give you a number to apply, how many people you need? I don't think anybody can do that. That is going to be individually determined by multiple factors, and we can't see all of those items.
And I would close the comment by saying it's really going to depend on what are the business objectives and business needs that fall under the scope of your property management department. In our case, we have 5 different groupings within my department, and they're staffed anywhere from 2 people to 5, depending on the complexity, as Doug said, of the process. So to me, it's volume, it's risk, it's complexity, It's also what is the scope of your responsibility. It may be very broad, it may be narrow, may be centralized, decentralized, all of those factors. So all of them need to be taken into consideration.
Thank you. I want to thank the panelists for sharing this hour with us. I think we received some great answers to questions. And Jessica, I'll turn it back over to you.
Oh, that's all I have as well. So thank you all for participating today, and we'll send a follow-up email with a link to the recording a little bit later this afternoon. And